Hey, welcome back, Algebra 1. Mr. Rabuzzi here. Today we've got a new topic. We're going to be starting Chapter 10, which is all about data and measuring data. So we're done with polynomials for the time being. So a little bit of a new topic if you wanted a refresh for the end of the year. Before we get started, I just wanted to show, I noticed the shadow here from that tree. It looks just like the Bulls logo, right? Horns. Interesting. It was meant to be. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about data. So today's topic is measures of center, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I just want to talk about what is data first. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of notes today. I'm not going to write everything out because it's really hard to write on this, but what is data? When we say, oh, I got data about the new, the new computer, the weather, right? That's data. Data is a list of, or a set of information, usually numbers, right? That's what we want to use. So it's a set of information about something, and usually in math, we're going to be using numbers, right? How many people like chocolate ice cream? How many people like vanilla ice cream? What's the percent of people who like vanilla ice cream? What's the average age of the people in our class? What's the average score on this test? Those are things we want to talk about with data. So we're going to be talking about data sets, right? So when you have a group of data, that's a data set, right? You might have a list of all the different test scores on a math test. That's something I have a lot of the time. I have that data. That's a data set. In that data set, you have a bunch of individual values. Okay? So we call each data point is a value, right? You know, Johnny got an A or 92. Elizabeth got a 93. Blah, blah, blah got a 97. Those are the values, right? 92, 93, 97. So a data set is full of values. And a lot of the time, we might have like a T-chart table of the values, you know, the name of the person and their score. So the student named ZZ, he got a score of 83, you know, and then the student named YZ, he got a score of 63. And then the student named XZ, they got a score of 2. You know, there's my values of my data set. The whole thing is the data set, and these are my values. So this is just a little quick reminder about what is data. So today we're going to be working with a group of data, right? We'll get an example that has a list like I just drew, right? There might be 15, 20 names and 15, 20 scores. There might be 5. But when we have big groups of numbers like this, it's hard to understand what it means, right? If I get a test scores and I just list all the test scores, it doesn't really tell me how much the class is learning, who's doing better, who's doing worse. Is the class learning more now? I don't know. But there are ways that we can figure out what the data really means. We can look in deeper and figure out what is the meaning of this data. What can I learn from it? And one of the ways we're going to do that is by measuring the center. Okay? Today is all about different ways you can measure the center of the data. Okay? So you can see, did most people get near an A or did most people get near a D? This is ways we can measure things like that. We have 4 different ways to measure center today. Some of them are very easy. Some of them are a little trickier, but it's good to take notes today. All right, let's start on the first, not that one, that's the fourth one. On the first 3. You might have talked about these before, right? We might know what mean, median, and mode are. These are 3 different measures of center. So let's talk about them each one at a time. First, we have mean. This has another name that we usually call it. We call it the average. So if you know how to do an average, you already know how to do a mean. It's the same process. Okay? Thumbs up. So let me write it out or talk about it in case you forgot. When you want to find the average of a data, you're gonna, let me erase. You're gonna do the sum of the values. What does sum mean? It means add. So we're gonna add all the values, so all the numbers in our data set. Sum of the values, so add them all up. And when you're done adding them all up, you're going to divide by the number of values. So how many numbers did you add up? That's what you divide by. Okay, write this down in your notes. I really recommend notes for this lesson because it's 4 straightforward methods, but it's hard to remember which one is which until you've done it a bunch of times. And writing it down is a big step to remembering it. Okay. This is not hashtag values. This is number of values. So if I have 10 people in a class and they all take a test, I'm going to add up their scores for the top, right? I'll add 63 plus 83 plus 2, blah, blah, blah. Add those all up to get a big number. Then I think, how many people did I just add up? How many scores did I just add up? Oh, that's right. There's 10 in my class. So once I get my big number, I will divide by 10 because that is how many numbers I added up. And then when I do that, boom, that is the average, the mean. And that is a good way to measure. It's a solid way to measure center. Usually it's the thing you start with first, and then you think, do I need to try a different method because maybe something went wrong? This is a good way to start. I mean, I recommend always trying average when you want to measure some data. It might not be the final answer, but it's a good place to start. All right. Then we have the median. And don't worry, we'll do an example after we talk about them. The median, it's pretty straightforward too, okay? The median is the middle number. You've probably done this before. Middle number. We'll do an example in a minute, but so to find the median, you write your numbers, your data values from lowest to highest. So 2, 17, 18, 63, 83. And when you have them all listed, you find the one that's right in the middle. So you cross off the top, the bottom, the top, the bottom, the top, the bottom. So let's do an example. This one's a little harder to understand without a picture. So if I have my test scores and somebody got a 50, somebody got a 54, somebody got a 60, somebody got a 70, somebody got an 80. So that's what if I have 5 people in my class? There's their test scores, right? 50, 54, 60, 70, 80. To find the median, I mean, this is easy because it's very small. I can just look 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The 60 is in the middle. That was easy. But if it's a big long list, you can cross out the bottom, cross out the top, cross out the bottom, cross out the top. You do that until you have 1 or 2 numbers left. If you have 1 number left, boom, you're done, right at 60. But what happens if you have, I don't know, test score of 50, 54, 60, 61, 70, 80. So we had 6 people in the class now. Okay, let me try again. Cross out the bottom, cross out the top. Bottom, top. But if I cross out the bottom and the top again, I'll have nothing left. So if you have 2 numbers left, you need to circle them both, and you will find the average of them. You'll find the mean of those 2 numbers. I'm going to do it in my head. 60 plus 61 right? Add them two up, then divide by how many you added up. So we add these two and divide by 2. 60 plus 61 is 121. 121 divided by 2 is 60.5. That's the only time it gets a little tricky for the median. If you get two numbers at the end, find the mean of those two numbers. Find the average of those two numbers. Okay, that's median. And the last of this triplet is mode. Mode is the most used. This is the most used number. So sometimes you can have two modes, right? If two numbers are used the same amount. Sometimes you don't have a real mode because there's no number is repeated. But say we have test scores, right? Somebody got a 60, a 61, 73. Oh, and Johnny got a 73 too. And 82, 83. Okay, there's my test scores. I look through and I count up what numbers were used the most. What numbers were the most people scoring. And it turns out 2 people scored a 73. So this is my mode. It is 73. Okay, let's do an example. Okay, so here's our data set right here. I wrote it down. We have a bunch of people who were runners. So this is maybe a race, right? This is a race that people had. We have our runners, and we have the time that they took to run. So maybe this is a 100-meter dash. That's pretty, these are good. I don't know, but they're not world record times, but they're pretty good times. Okay. Tina, Carl, Michael, Ben, Lance, Randy, Noah, Victor. Those are the people who ran in the race. And their times, so remember in this one, the times, the lower is better, right? You want to run faster. So we have 11.2, 11.9, 12.1, 11.3, 10.9, 12.1, 11.0, and 11.7. Okay. We want to find the mean, median, and mode. Bing, bang, boom. First is the mean. To find the mean, let's use red for mean, because I wrote that name in red. For mean, we're going to add them all up, right? So I'm going to take all, I don't need to put them in order for mean, but I will take all the data from over there and add it up. We're going to have 11.2 plus 11.9 plus 12.1 plus 11.3. And don't torture yourself. Just use a calculator for this part. You don't need to add up 8 decimal numbers for no reason. 10.9 plus, well, unless you think it's fun. Sometimes it is. Plus 11.0. I'm going to put the other one in front because I ran out of space. And 11.7. Okay, I'm going to add them all up. And after I add them all up, I need to divide by the number of values. So over there in the chart, we added up 8 values, right? There were 8 people. We added up the 8 people's times. So we divide by 8. Okay. This ends up being, we add them all up, we get 92.2. And we divide that by 8. So in your calculator, you can just add, get the answer, and divide by 8. And you'll find out it was 11.525 seconds. 11.525 seconds. So the average speed of people, or the average time it took to run, was 11.5 seconds, right? Really close to 11.5 seconds. So you see, some people were faster, right? Who was his name? Lance was the fastest. He had 10.9. And some people were slower, right? Michael and Randy only had 12.1. But the average is 11.5. That's pretty good. So this is your mean or your average. Not too hard to find. All right, let's move on to median, sorry. All right, median. This is in blue. So now I do need to put them in order. So I'm going to write my nut values in order. So the fastest was 10.9. I know I'm going to run out of space. So let me start way over here. 10.9, comma, 11.0 is next, comma, 11.2, and then an 11.3. Okay, 11.2, 11.3, 11.7, 11.9, and then 12.1 and 12.1. So let me make sure I wrote down 8 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, that's 8. Now we want to find the median. So we cross off the bottom and then the top. And then the bottom and then the top. And then the bottom, top. And we have 2 left over. Right? When you have 2 left over, you need to add them up and divide by 2. So 11.3 plus 11.7 divided by 2. We'll get 23 divided by 2, which is 11.5. So that is the median. Okay? The only tricky part with the median is writing down all your numbers. Sometimes people forget those, right? They miss one of the numbers. And the other part is if you have 2 answers at the end, you need to add them up, divide by 2 to get your final median. Okay. And then we do mode. So in a mode, I don't need to write them all again, but I'm just going to count. Is there any doubles in here, right? That's the question. Yeah, so I only have one of this number, one of these, 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 but I do have 2 times where I see, there are 2 places that I see 12.1. So 12.1 shows up the most. So the mode is 12.1, right? Mode is pretty easy to find. You just have to look for what numbers came up the most. Remember, if they're all unique, if there's no doubles, no triples, there's not really a mode. Or the mode is all numbers because all the numbers that were there because they're all the same. All right, that's mean, median, and mode. Mean takes the most time, median takes a little bit of time, and mode is very quick. So I don't think these 3 are very hard, but it just takes practice, 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 right? I've done it many, many times in my life, so I think it's pretty easy. You try it if you work through all the assignment, it's going to get easy for you. Okay, let's move on to the last measure. This is called percentile. So this gets used a lot in the doctor's office, actually. Have you ever been to the doctor and they say, usually it's your parents, right? I didn't pay attention when I was a kid, but they say, oh, he's in the 70th percentile for height, or the 50th percentile for weight, or the 99th percentile for height. That means if they say you're in the 90th percentile, that means 90% of people are below you in that stat. So somebody who is in the 90th percentile for height, that means that 90% of people are shorter than them, and 10%, the leftover, is taller than them. So this tells you how many numbers, right? It could be people. We could be doing like runners like that, or people's height, But it could be other things like temperatures, right? Today's temperature is in the 90th percentile. That means that this is hotter than 90% of days. That's pretty hot. What it tells you is how your number stacks up against other numbers. Okay? So it tells you the different percentages of the data. All right, so I'm going to write up my next data set, and then we'll be back for the example. Okay, I drew my data. It didn't come out as neat as the other one, and I don't know. Oh no, all the numbers are on there. They're just really small at the bottom. Okay, so this is some data about some classes at a school. I named the classes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So there's 10 classes, and they had a challenge. Not challenge. They wanted to collect canned food to give out to charity. And so each classroom collected lots of cans of food to give away, and they counted it up to see who did the most collecting. So here we see, Class A, they had 125 cans of food. Class D, they had 215 cans. And we want to know, whoops, I don't need that. We want to know the percentile of Class G. Okay? We're going to pick a class. So it's going to be Class G that we're looking at down here. To find the percentile, here's our little formula. This one is also has a formula like mean. Percentile is the number of values below our target. So we're going to pick one of these data numbers. We're going to pick G, and we need to find the number of values below. So smaller numbers. How many numbers are smaller in our data? How many of our data points are smaller than our target? That's our top number. And then on the bottom with our division, we want to put the total number of values. So this is the total. So in this one, the total is we have 10 values, 10 different numbers. Okay? We do that division and we multiply it all by, so we divide this first, then we multiply by 100. Okay? And then we will find a percentile. So write this down in your notes. This is a very good formula. It's just something you need to memorize or have really handy on your notes. And you don't memorize it in 1 second. You memorize it with practice, practice, practice. Everything that's worthwhile in life takes a lot of practice. That's the sad truth. If you're good at it right away, that's nice. But with practice, you could be superb at it. Right? Okay. So let's try the percentile. What we have to do first for percentile is put the numbers in order. Okay? So step 1 is the order. Because we're not looking at the list there to tell us what's below. We need to put them in order first, then we can tell what's below. So what's the order? We start with smallest is 94. Okay, so we found our target and we listed all the numbers in order. So now we need to find the number of values below it. So underneath the G, smaller than G number, which is 151, how many numbers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 numbers below it, and we divide that by the total number of values. So what's the total? How many numbers do we have? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So total, we have 10 numbers. So do that division, 6 divided by 10. And then when you have that in your calculator, multiply the answer by 100. And it will turn out you'll get 60, which means it is 60 percentile. That classroom was in the 60th percentile for collecting goods. So that means 60% of the class, they were at 60%. So 59% of the classes did worse, and 40% of the classes did better. Okay? That's what percentile tells you. What's your rank? What is that data? What is this class's rank in all those classes? It is the 60th percentile. That means it beats 60% of classes, and 40% of classes did better, right? Percentages are out of 100. All right. That is percentile. So these examples are very helpful, but they are not the same as the assignment, right? These are the examples that they did in the assignment. You need to work on the practice problems, which I pointed out with arrows in your assignment. So remember, contact me if you need any help.